Hi everyone,
Hello,
I am Žiga
and my name is Bojan.
and we are half of Mix Analog.
That's right. And what is Mix Analog?
And Mix Analog is a online service, a semi medium-sized cloud of analog audio gear that's been automated and that you can access via our online app and process your audio in real time with lossless quality.
That's right. All of the stuff you see behind us and some tape machines that are a bit hidden behind us over in that corner, we are offering them online so you can stream and use them on your projects. So that's what we do. We have a webinar every 2 weeks and in which we will discuss what's happened since last time that we had one. So any news and breakthroughs and successes and failures that we have encountered. And you guys, in the meantime, can write us any questions or suggestions that you like in the chat box of YouTube. And I'll be checking in that direction every now and then to see on the screen if there's anything new, and we will try to answer as soon as we can.
And your questions are not, they don't have to be strictly related to the theme or the stuff that we're talking about at the moment. So if you have any questions in any way related to what we're doing, just ask away and we'll try our best to answer them.
That's right.
We have a couple of points prepared for today.
Right. So we'll kick things off, I think, with the demo of what we have in store. So this year has been amazing. We've done a lot of things. We've added new hardware, we've added a lot of features and so on. But now that we're starting on the path to the next year, to 2020, we are thinking a lot about the user experience, about how Mix Analog is used and who is using it and for what and so on. We're taking your suggestions into account and we're making a very early alpha preview of some technology that we have in store that we want to get out to you guys as soon as possible in 2020. So maybe let's just start showing it, right?
Let me just switch to that view.
Okay.
So maybe for some of you, this banana stuff is already familiar.
Right.
That's our audio destruction unit. It's a saturation/distortion box that we offer. But what's interesting is maybe the way that this interface differs from
regular Mix Analog.
So
right now in Mix Analog, when you get to the live part, you see all of the units that you have in your session.
I'll just open the app in the meantime.
Okay, so sure. So I'll let's have a contrast between both, right? So we're gonna book a session on the same.
Yeah. Where is it? ADU. Okay. Like that.
So right now, if you go to Mix Analog, you are greeted with an interface like that. And this is the full interface, okay? So here we have everything from uploading of files to bouncing to playing. You have metering and so on, and control over the converters. In the demo that we will show you today, we're only focusing on the gear itself. So on this yellow blob in the center. But the thing is, right now in Mix Analog, these units, they are just organized top to bottom, and they take up a fixed position on the screen. They're always there, and you can't move them, you can't close them, you can't interact with them, aside from moving the knobs, obviously. And Žiga has already used the feature that we have now for some time, where you can change the scale of the whole user interface, or at least the part with these hardware-looking units. And but you change all of them at the same time. So of course people have different screen sizes, people have different preferences how they want to organize their session. So we want to go kind of more into the traditional way of things, where you have windows that you move, drag around, that you can close and then open again. So let's try that. Okay. So this is something that we would like to do in the next year. So all of Mix Analog live sessions would open up with windows like that you could manipulate the windows of each of the units that you have in your session, so that you could open just the windows that you need, and you can reorder them and move them around your screen as you like, and then we would have something. Right now it's in the bottom, but I think it will be somewhere else in the real version, or at least what we intend to do. Is to have this stripe of units going from left to right that actually represents your signal flow. And then the idea is that you could just drag to reorder. So if you wanted to have an EQ after a compressor or vice versa, you could do that with drag and drop.
Yeah, this is still very early beta. It's running on some.
Yeah, but we already can. So maybe to demonstrate, we can in this early alpha, actually more than beta, you can already turn the knobs, and the meters are animated. They are going around, and you can change the view of the window, whether it's dual mono or a stereo, and so a few things already work pretty nice, and there are, of course, a lot of things still missing, but I think it shows the direction into which we want to go. And you guys are very, very welcome to give us feedback on whether or not this is a good direction. So if you really, really like the current interface, where you have things just organized top to bottom like this, and you can't move stuff around, then give us a shout out in the chat or in an email or wherever. And if you like this, then also please tell us, so that we know that we are going in a good direction for you guys. There is another reason why we're going into this and why we're doing it right now and not maybe in a year or so. We have a lot of units that are like stereo, or we have one even that's mono, this 1176 behind me. They just take two channels, and then they produce two channels, right? So they just pass audio through them, and you just need one track, one stereo track or one mono track that goes through it.
I may want to interrupt you, Nathan, because we skipped a couple of pretty important aspects of why this arrangement is supposed to be better.
Oh, cool.
At least we think so. Is the fact that all this metering and those meters and those meters and this meter here are, because of the way the browsers work, they can be pretty CPU intensive. So people have reported experiencing audio glitches.
Yeah.
Just because there was too much metering and too much flickering lights going on the screen. So diminishing the browser window size solved the issue, which is a bit, it's silly in a way. So in this new paradigm or new way of doing our graphics, the closed units, or I don't know if overlapping units also.
I think it would be just the closed ones, to be honest. But yeah,
are not rendered and do not take up CPU capabilities or resources.
So the animations that you don't see don't burn your CPU.
Yeah.
So currently we calculate and show all of the animations, and it's actually the browser that dictates how often they are refreshed. So in Chrome that means 60 times per second, so animations are super smooth, but also it takes a lot of CPU actually to do it in the browser. While it's great to have everything in the browser and not need you guys to download anything and just jump right into Mix Analog, it does come with a performance penalty. It's not as fast as native code. So we've got to figure some ways around it for people who don't have such powerful computers. And we really want people who are on the go, like who just have a laptop going around somewhere, to be able to use Mix Analog. And some of those laptops are sadly not as powerful. So this could not only save you some screen real estate because you can close things that you don't need, you'd actually also save on CPU because then you wouldn't see the animations that you don't need anyway.
I think we have a question. Can I check it out?
We actually have a shout out from Miro.
Oh,
Yeah, saying that he can't stay, but Merry Christmas, and yeah, that's great. Thank you. Merry Christmas
likewise.
to you as well. Yeah. So there are no other questions right now. But
okay. And another thing that's also coming with the new GUI paradigm is more real estate in the header of your GUI. So this is going to offer a much better or more clean or visible way of doing mid-side and dry wet or parallel processing.
Yeah.
Which is probably going to be in a separate extension window to, I don't know, to the right or to the bottom or overlaid or whatever. This is something that we still have to figure out. But we have seen that those capabilities go either unnoticed,
Which is
or
sad, yeah.
are not used as much as they could be to benefit you to get a better sound.
Those knobs are super small and hard to spot. So I think when we are going forward with this paradigm, we can make them a separate window or something like that, so that just to expose them more, so they will be noticed and used. And also, it's very hard to encode everything about the mid-side and dry wet unit into just two small knobs and a toggle. So hopefully that if you put it into a separate window, we can do all of the things like balance and so on at some point, so we can make it more advanced for people who are looking for like a very advanced control over the gain staging.
Yeah, or make it just a simple one mix knob and one MS knob and
exactly. So you could have one window that is either complex or simple based on some setting. So yeah, those are the ideas here.
Yeah, I think now we are ready to expand on the idea of why we are
right. I just say that also when you are doing something like working on a compression setting or something like that, maybe you don't want to see all the metering at the same time. Maybe you just want to focus on one thing. So just having one window open and everything else closed when you're doing that could actually be a benefit too. So I think there's also one motivation why you want a UI like that.
Well, yeah, it's each engineer has his own way of thinking and the way of putting stuff up on the screen to represent the way your brain works.
Of course.
So I don't know, maybe someone likes to have his whole chain arranged on two screens at the same time and have a look at all the settings and all the meters and all the interactions at the same time, and maybe someone else really wants to focus on one unit and get the sound right for that unit, and in that case maybe closing all other windows and just focusing on the stuff you're tweaking
makes more sense.
Might make more sense for some people.
True enough. And going back to the units that are not just stereo in or mono in but have something else, maybe you can tell us more about that.
Yeah, we've mentioned that in the previous webinar, I think.
I think so, yeah.
But I think this is going to be a pretty... we're going to mention this often in the next few webinars because it's such a big project that we took on, and it's such it's exciting to take that next step.
Definitely.
So what we're talking about is a summing mixer. We are already deep in preparations to make it work, and one of those is also how to make it work as a graphic interface. So it's not only building the hardware and putting it online, but it's also to find the best and most useful and simple way for you to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
And this, in one way or another, means that the mix analog interface will have to become multi-track.
Somehow. Yeah.
Somehow.
Exactly. So how we get there is up to you guys to tell us on your preferences, but we are already working on like some of our ideas that we have right now. And this thing that we are demoing right now with the multiple windows kind of ties into the concept that you can have windows with gear floating on top of a background where you could have something else, like an arrange window with tracks or something like that.
Yeah, we're not trying to invent the wheel all over again.
Yeah.
So in a way, we are building a DAW in the cloud.
Backed by analog hardware,
Yeah.
of all things, but yeah.
So yeah, and most all DAWs work in a way that plugins are floating windows or single processing devices, be it plugins or your inserts or whatever, are single floating windows, and then you have a mix and arrange view or window in one way or another.
Yeah, that actually does this whole like organizational view, so that you can organize the tracks, that you can label your tracks, and so that you can see all the faders. So these are kind of, I think, the minimum information that you want to see on the screen, and then you maybe access the individual analog inserts or processors as floating windows. That makes sense to us. So that's the direction we're heading into. And if you guys have a better idea or some interesting feedback on how to do it differently or how to do it like that, but maybe tweak a few things, then just let us know. We're dying to hear more about that.
Well, if nothing else, we don't want to waste time developing an interface that is not going to work for you. So
yeah.
That's the main reason why we are so anxious to hear your feedback. So we actually build something that will serve you well.
Yeah. So there are no new questions.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we can just continue on with like what's next for.
Yeah.
Aside from the UI.
Yeah. I don't know if we mentioned the name already, but this device is going to be called Sumatra, which is for those of you that maybe have missed or not been very anxious to be at geography classes. It's an island in between Indian and Pacific Ocean, but I digress.
Anyway,
yeah. So
what is Sumatra?
Yeah, Sumatra is a 24 mono or 12 stereo channels into 3 colorful buses into 1 very clean stereo master bus.
Okay.
Summing mixer.
So usually you have a summing mixer that is just a few channels. There are like, let's say, 8 mono channels and 8 stereo channels into 2. Into just 1 stereo bus. So that's kind of the basics, and we are trying to reach well beyond that. As usual in our way in over engineering stuff. we are putting in a metric ton of features. So one of those is that each channel has its own pan and volume, so it's not only left, right, center, but but you can actually set the actual pan in analog, right? So it's each of the 24 channels has an individual level and pan.
Yeah, so it's actually a mixing board, 24 channel.
Yeah, it's actually a 24 channel mixing board, and you can hard pan left, right, but you don't need to if you don't want to.
And then after that, those 3 colorful buses are right next to me here.
Okay. Yeah. We'll talk more about them.
And we are already testing and choosing our summing bus makeup amps. So just maybe a short explanation for those that are not familiar with
do that.
how stuff works. Usually when you sum a lot of channels, into one bus, there is a loss of general volume.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah, because of things that something that's called impedance messes things up for you, so you have to make up for the gain that's lost in a big summing
While
bus.
summing, yeah. The more channels you sum, the more you have to make up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for that, you have to have summing amplifiers. And those can, in many ways, make a lot of difference in the general sound of how your stuff gels together, or
how your mix sounds. Like the amps make quite a big difference. So
we are putting in. So the first choice was pretty straightforward. The first choice was those guys in combination with those guys.
That's some iron here.
Yeah, big chunks of iron. And those guys. So maybe some of you have already recognized what I'm talking about. And for those of you that have not, this is a Neve 1073.
Well, the 1073 was the version of this plus EQ.
Yeah.
And these guys are not with EQ, but it's everything else. So I think the official designation is 1290. So what this thing does is it makes up the volume, like Žiga said. So if you take 16 channels and you want to mix them down to 2 channels, you have 2 of these, and each of them takes care of, let's say, of a left and a right in the mix, and it will amplify back to the level that's normal, again, for conversion to AD or putting through some compressor or something like that. And the most important thing here is that it's not just making up the gain, it's also producing sound on its own. So these are like actual Neve transformers that we are using. So this is the real deal. And we've been, so this is going to give you a very authentic Neve sound, the sound of a Neve console. So you will be able to say, let's say, first 4 or 8 or 6 or whatever channels, my whole drum submix would go, for example, to Neves if I'd like to do that.
It's going to work the same as any desk with submix or mix buses.
Yeah, assignable buses. Yeah.
So each mono channel will have 3 assignment knobs that can be sent either to the Neve bus or to the next one or to the next one. So you can bus different groups of instruments to the bus that serves them best tone-wise.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think was that a question or a comment?
Yes, there was a question already. Will there be a link function for grouping the channel volume control in pairs? So it's a very good question. We haven't thought about that because we've shown you some of the user interface for the floating windows, but we actually haven't got an user interface demo for either the track part or the mixer part. So we don't know yet how it's going to look like, but it should have this function. I think it's very important if you want.
Yeah, the stereo links and VCA groups, so to say, although we are not using VCAs in the mixer, but since it's digitally controlled, it can be done.
Yeah, it's called DVCAs in those, I think.
Yeah, probably DCAs or whatever. I know that the Behringer desks call them DCAs.
Really?
And I loathe the term for that
weird.
reason, but
the idea is you could ride more than one channel's volume at the same time. Yes, that makes sense. I think something like shift clicking or something like that could be done to select more than one fader and move them at the same time. Something like that. I think it shouldn't be too hard to make like a real stereo
link
channel, like to have, let's say, summing mixers channel 3 and 4 that you decide it's going to be stereo. Just take 2 mono and make them stereo. So then you can just put a stereo track on those, and then you have just one fader for that and a balance control, something like that maybe. We're still not sure on how to do that, so if you have some suggestions, let us know. But good question, thank you.
So I think there's no more
questions,
so we may
can
continue with the second.
So to sum up, you can assign every channel to a different summing bus. The summing bus has a different sound on it. The first one is going to be Neve. It's going to use original transformers. It's going to sound like a Neve. That's the idea.
Yeah. We've already the stuff that I'm showing you has already passed initial testing. So these are confirmed to be working, that have enough gain, that the noise is low enough, and that they sound better than something that's coming straight out of your computer, because that's kind of the point of.
That's the point, yeah. If it sounds exactly the same, then we failed somehow.
Okay, so the next one is this one, and it's an API style. So this, I think it's called a dual inverting op-amp configuration.
Yes, that's true, yeah.
So those are actually one pair on the board is receiving the left and right summing bus and buffering it. Then there's a fader after that, and the other pair is buffering the fader.
And producing the output.
Yes. So there's a lot of, and of course, a big chunk of iron
is used at the end.
Again, it comes at the end of those.
So that's the only part we're still missing, because we want to get some originals, like with Neve. So we are hunting down some original iron. We've found some, and hopefully we'll get all of that. If not, there are still a few people who make API transformers, and we'll use those if we need to, but we're still looking for originals first. So we really want to make this like an authentic, but very like ours, but so it's new, so it's an original work by us, but still the sounds that you would get would be classic, authentic sounds as much as we can make them.
We're taking advantage of the fact that we don't have to build 500 of those. We are building one,
so we can be very boutique about what we buy, because if there's just 2 pairs available in the whole world, that's not going to stop us, because that's exactly as much as we need. Yeah. So,
and the last color.
Shall I bring one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me try. It's heavy and big, but
this one is big, heavy, and clunky. But it's another serious classic. So now we've had Class A transistor, we've had a discrete op-amp, so now what we're missing is tube amps.
Tubes. We've got tubes.
And this box is a...
It's a mic pre, actually.
Yeah.
So this is a microphone preamplifier on tubes. It's got a pentode and a dual triode at the end. It comes from the Red 47 style boards. It's something that I built a long time ago from very cool parts, like new old stock tubes from Telefunken and so on. So really cool stuff, and solder iron and so on, really high-end components. So anyway, these were used as mic pre's, but it just when this was a desk, when it was used in a desk in the, I think it was the 50s, something like that, the same mic pre's were actually used as summing amps as well. So just in a slightly different configuration.
That's in a way it's a theme for a lot of mixing desks, as we saw with the Neve or the API style card. The gain you usually require for a summing bus is somewhere in the range of 30 decibels, which is in a way very similar to a standard or an average microphone to record stuff. So the topologies, because of the gain required, were very, very, very very alike in summing amps and microphone amps. So the modular desks that were made from cassettes or modules or whatever could use the same circuit for mic pre or for the summing amps, and that's the beauty of it.
So we can afford to do that again. I've spoken to Jakob Erland from the owner and founder of Gyrof Audio, and we were talking about what kind of summing amp would best work. If we wanted a tube summing amp, but we didn't want, if we wanted a tube summing amp to complement the Neves and the APIs, what should we get? And we eventually just, found out that the 4.7 would be a perfect fit. It's a pentode and a nice aggressive sounding tube preamp. It was used as a summing amp already. In its history, it's produced some amazing albums. So it should be a really good fit for our summing mixer. So that's going to be the third color bus. So when you have a summing mixer session set up, the way we envisage it right now is, let's say you have 8 tracks of drums and 4 tracks of guitars and so on, and you would be able for each track say, okay, this one goes to a Neve, this one goes to an API, this one goes to the tube, this other one goes to the tube as well, this one goes to the Neve again, and so on. And then you would have 3 mixes, one going with all the tracks that were selected for the Neves, one that goes out for the APIs, and one that goes for all of the tube. They would get amplified, and then you could use them again with our gear and some back to the master. So that's the configuration that we're going for in Sumatra, and those are the amps that we selected.
And I think that we had one more question about the discrete op amps, and they are indeed, I think it's 2550.
I think they're 2520s or something like
okay.
that. Yeah.
Yep.
I think they are not Melkors, so they are not 1730s, or are they 1730s? I don't know, actually.
No, they are 2520.
Okay, so they're 2520s, yeah. So those.
Yeah. And maybe another word on some initial tests, because I've got the chance to listen to all of those.
Listen to all of them,
So it's maybe the first thing that really struck me is that how transparent actually all those devices are. And you really have to, listen in for, I don't know, a track or two, maybe for 5 to 10 minutes, until you start to notice the subtle differences, which then become more and more obvious the more you listen to them in more different tracks.
Yeah.
But I think that the selection as it is now, at least to my ears, is really surprisingly complementary.
Yeah,
is that
covers
right?
a lot of ground.
Yeah, because I've found that the Neves kind of take care of stuff that does not have enough of that solidity in the low mids or the bass, because this punch the Neves amp brings out from the track is really a signature sound of pretty much all the Neve gear. But it's not the brightest amp that you can imagine. And then, on the contrary, the APIs, especially when not driven hard, are really present, really, I would not say bright, but they just retain or maybe even augment a little bit all the high-end details in the track. So it's kind of a good balance in that way. And then the third, the Rat Pre, is kind of a cool vintage tubey vibe that does not, it's not dull in a way, but it produces some of that warmth in the low mids that, I don't know, the tracks that you may find sterile or thin might really benefit from
Going
the
for that, yeah.
from the red tube pre, because it just conjures up some fuzz in the low mids that is subtle, but can really help a lot with music that has not seen a lot of tubes and transformers on its way. So between the three, I think that for each, I could find them all to be trouble solvers for different aspects of your tracks when you're doing the summing. So there's a remedy for
each problem.
Yeah, for each problem.
So you have a congestion in the mids or in the low mids and stuff like that. You could use a certain amp to get maybe a bit around that without using EQ per se, but using something slightly different.
Yeah, it's
a color.
Yeah, it's so hard to talk about this because it's so much easier when you hear it, and then.
And maybe those should be our next steps when we do get the transformers for the API, which is the only thing that's missing right now to get all of the three buses like 100% complete. We've used some other transformers for the API just to make a functional test and some initial listening, but we will make our final decision on what configuration of the API to use once we get the transformers. And I think at that time would be a good time to produce some demos of the individual amps, just so that you guys can have a listen. We'll make those downloadable when we get the last amps. Right. So you'll be able to hear the difference well before we actually drop the Sumatra and be able to maybe tell us if we need to tweak something.
Yeah.
All right.
So I think that we've covered everything about the news on the summing mixer.
Right.
As far as I can see, we don't have new questions.
That's true.
So a couple of short announcements or maybe updates. Yeah, the first one is about the tape machines, which incidentally someone is using right now at the moment. But the one that got the update is actually the Telefunken that's below here.
No, you can see some shiny stuff there. Yeah.
And we found some weird situations when the auto shutdown
could interfere with rewinding.
Yeah.
So it could happen. It would get in a weird state where it would shut down during rewinding, and that was really hard to track down. But we got around to it. We fixed it. Hopefully, so far so good. We haven't seen any new errors of this kind crop up. So it's been a good update. The tapes have been really stable now for the last week or so since we fixed the bug. So that was a good thing to do, make those things even more stable. Just something that we want to do is to make sound like super stable. Whenever, if your internet works, then you shouldn't have any problems using it.
And the second update is for the Elysia gear that we were talking about in the last two webinars.
Yeah, something like that.
So we figured out that we could not fit the automation in the boxes as they are in the original enclosures. So we are doing a clone of the enclosure that fits on the original front panel that has an extended length, but the same dimensions in all other aspects.
Yeah, it's actually more like an extender. So the original enclosure part actually stays. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, we just telescopically.
Oh.
And so it's actually going to be the back of the unit, and the front of the unit will look exactly the same. So without any changes whatsoever, we're just adding an extension in the mid.
Oh, I didn't know that. I think we were exchanging the whole back part.
Nope.
Oh, that's even cooler.
No, the back part stays exactly as is. So it's going to be actually pretty cool. We've taken our time with this because we wanted to make the cooling right. Elysia gear is usually Class A. Usually discrete, so it can be quite hot, and we wanted to make sure when we add a lot of other what do they call it, relays that also can get hot to the unit, we should take care of heating and ventilation. So it's actually a pretty nice extension, and we've ordered those, and they're coming in January. So we'll soon see if we did them right. We don't usually do metal stuff that much, like our own parts. So this is going to be a first, where we are actually ordering them to be built somewhere else, and we'll see how that goes. So keeping our fingers crossed that it's all going to be okay, so that when that happens, we can actually start working on the electronics of the envelope, which is going to be the first Elysia 1U unit that we're going to be putting out. It's going to be over here above the Better Maker.
It already has its cables and designated place in the rack.
Everything ready, just waiting for the hardware to get done, and then we can do the rest.
Okay, so that's it for gear related stuff, or actually
gear and software, I guess.
Yeah.
We covered quite a lot of ground today, so
yeah, but there's more of gear coming up.
Really?
In a way.
Oh, you mean our plans? Yeah, we
Yeah.
have a lot more gear. It's just not just the summing mixer and Elysia stuff. There's more gear coming, and we might need to get some people just to do that somehow.
But it's more of a festive spirit.
Right.
From now on, it's less business and more fun. And because we, as a company, like to, work our asses off, and then
That's true.
want to reap at least some of the rewards for that, or just give ourselves a pat on the back.
I say we work hard and we party hard. So,
Yeah.
so when we don't work hard, we really we want to have fun, like good old-fashioned fun.
Yeah,
So-
it's kind of a visit to a museum kind of escapes my definition of partying hard, but
It is in a way. When you look at what we went to see and what we saw, I think, at least gear-wise, we saw something that I'd say was a party.
yeah, it's really something that you don't
See every day. Yeah.
don't have the chance to see every day. So we went to see a exhibition about Jugoton.
Yeah. What is that?
What is that? Jugoton was a. I just have to make sure that. Okay,
it's working.
Here it is. Was the
Record
biggest,
label.
and I don't think it was the first, but it was definitely the biggest and most
It was actually
influential.
the first.
Oh.
Yeah, it was the first.
Also, cool.
Well, the first one in the new regime, right?
Oh,
So
cool.
post World War II, it was the first and the largest, and the only one for some time,
Mhm.
until it was possible to make them to make new ones, because we got one in Maribor and so on
Yeah.
later on, but it was for a long time. It was the only record label, and it was really an amazing business that the state set up so that people could get access to records and music and so on. It was a combination of a pressing plant to make vinyl and eventually cassettes, and it was a recording studio where music was produced, and it was a lab for technology stuff around duplication and so on. So a lot of things crammed into one big space, and what a space it was. So
Yeah.
so this is what we went to have a look at, was the exhibition about Jugoton. So,
Yeah. So without going too much into history, maybe we'll return to that later a bit.
maybe.
We saw firsthand, or very close up, the whole procedure of how to actually make a vinyl record. For maybe if some of our viewers is of, let's say, an older manufacturing date, they might remember how that stuff works, but I am not old enough to actually have a chance to see how the vinyl records were actually made.
Yeah, the whole process was
Yeah.
new to us, I think, to all of us. So it was really interesting to see what kind of gear was used, what kind of processes were used, because a lot of things are very different from now. So we still have recording, mixing, mastering, and then duplication and so on in case you're delivering on a CD or something. But if you're going to the internet, then you don't even have duplication anymore. So, but still, the mixing and mastering stuff has the same name, but it was so much different back then.
Yeah. Okay, so you probably know this guy.
Hello.
Yeah, it's another cousin, maybe an uncle,
Maybe.
of the
one we have,
steward
yeah.
that we have behind me, and this was used as a
Master player.
master player. Yeah,
I think so.
in some
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
So
Recorder.
this guy was connected via the mastering console,
Which is this
It's
beauty.
full of beautiful Neumann parts, to that guy here. And this is a machine that I've seen for the first time.
Yeah. In
Um,
real life.
and it's a cutting lathe.
Yes. So it's a record cutting lathe from Lyrec with a stylus from Ortofon. Both of them are Danish companies from Copenhagen. So never seen one of these in person. I think some of these things go for over 100K these days if you want one. So it was very interesting to see what they look like in person, and they are built like a tank and they look so awesome. So this was used to make the master into a disc of shellac, I believe,
Yeah.
which was then metallized so that you could get a metal layer on top of the vinyl layer.
Yeah, sadly we don't have a photo of that particular process, but
But we do have the machine, right? That is the plating afterwards.
actually, yeah,
I
it
think
was
the
it was
ones
a
over here-
two-part process. The first one was just
Spraying it. Yeah.
the
metal.
silver something
It might be even
solution
silver, yeah.
onto the shellac disc that was cut with the
lathe, yeah.
with the lathe, and then it was how's it called,
Plated?
plated,
Electroplated? I think so. Galvanized?
galvanized. That was the word I was looking for. In those baths
Yeah.
here,
Chemical bath.
to produce a much thicker,
More resistant.
layer of nickel, I guess.
Nickel, silver, nickel, I think so, yeah.
And then those plates
They
were first inspected with
Yes.
a microscope.
Actually, the shellac was inspected first. But yeah, so each stage was inspected anyway, many times under the microscope. Even the final cuts, some of them were inspected in a microscope. So, but yeah, eventually they duplicated the metal parts to make the final
Those.
negatives that were used in a press that I've read produced over 100 tons of weight at 160 degrees Celsius to squish a disc in one go.
Yeah, it was really funny looking video. That funny. It really surprised me.
Very interesting because you look at it and you're like, really, that survives?
Yeah.
That actually happens, and then you have sound on this. How?
Yeah. So the worker that was manning this machine put the sticker or the label of the record right here and on the top, and then put a black
a blob of vinyl.
donut of raw vinyl here in the center, and then the press,
Just press down, and that's it.
yeah, and pressed so hard that it actually made a record,
A pancake.
a pancake from that blob of vinyl in one go. It like takes 2 seconds or something.
That is just
Yeah.
amazing. Don't think about what happens if your hand goes there, but
Oh no.
but it was so impressive to see not only that it could be done, but it was done over and over and over at such high pressure, such high temperatures, and so long ago. So they had this technology like decades ago. They could just duplicate and duplicate and duplicate these vinyl records, and they still sound great today. So it wasn't only it's not only that it could be done, it was also done very well. So that really surprised me at the speed and precision at which they could make records with this kind of process. So a lot of surprises for us actually here, not only from the technology department, but also getting to know the let's say social or societal function of Yugoton. You would think, since it was the only and it was the only record label in a communist country, and it was state run and so on, state owned and state run, that it would actually be probably just a big propaganda machine and have a lot of you would have a lot of problems releasing something like a rock record or something on it. We're talking about the 60s here, but actually that's not the case. So by my calculation, I think by the time Elvis's first release was 4 years old, Yugoton already released one in Yugoslavia, and that was a Western music in a communist country. So it really was interesting to me to find out that they let the people get that influence from the West freely. Like that was normal. It was not something like a black market, or you would have to know a guy that knew a guy that imported things from Italy or something. But no, you could go to a normal record shop and buy your rock album. That was okay. That was normal.
The devil's
and everybody,
music.
Yeah, and you could just do that. So that was amazing to me. Find out more about our history and where I think this freedom of music that I see still a lot in our in the whole of ex-Yugoslavia states. There's this so many genres, so many tastes, so much freedom in expressing and listening to music of so many different genres. That I think it seems that that's a historical it's a thing that happened because it was already such in the early times after the war. So kudos to Yugoton for being brave enough to do things like that. We saw some releases and covers that would be risked by today's standards.
Yeah, I would wager that a lot of the covers that were on display there are so provocative that they would probably be censored today.
Yeah, and I think you couldn't make a YouTube video with that. Yeah. It would be demonetized instantly and maybe even deleted.
Yeah, I don't know if they put, black blobs on nipples or something. I don't know what happens, but there's a lot of nudity and a lot of
suggestive pictures and lots of art pictures that could be interpreted in many ways, which many of those are really naughty. So it was really cool to see that there was a big freedom of expression back then. Really inspiring, actually. So we had a lot of fun. We didn't work that day much. We just went to a museum and saw some amazing stuff, amazing gear, learned a lot of interesting history. It was a great day.
Shall we conclude with that?
I think so. There are no new questions, I think.
No?
I don't think so. So, actually, after all this much fun at the museum, we're gonna go back to work now, and we're gonna try and give you the best mix analog possible. So, until we meet again, which is in 14 days or so, we wish you the best Christmas and New Year possible. Yeah. So, have a good one. Have a great holiday season, and we'll see you.
Yeah. See you next year.
All right. Bye.
Bye.